All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Burgundy Club virtual tasting. My name is Greg. I'm here in the States. I do most of the communicating with you. Stephen is in Chromie. He does a lot of the cooking. We'll take you on tours if you ever visit in Chromie. And then, of course, Dennis is the proprietor of Elden Selections, finds all these fantastic producers and really knows the ground floor of everything that's going on in Burgundy. And that's how we get all these incredible wines to you. So today we will be talking about Moulin from Rottiers. It's a Beaujolais Cru 2019 vintage. That wine we'll be drinking second. The wine we'll be drinking first is Château Cary Potet. This is a Bourgogne Rouge from the Côte Chalonnaise in a 2018 vintage. So let's get into it. Dennis, how did you hear about Cary Potet, and where did you find her from?
Well, Cary Potet. Cary Potet doesn't exist anymore. It's the funny thing. It's now called the Château of the Chamois, and it is based up around the northern part of the Côte Chalonnaise, up near Bourgogne. But years and years ago, we met a fellow at one of the early Grands Jours de Bourgogne named Charles de Bessay, and Charles de Bessay was the owner of the Château de Cary Potet, and he made these amazing Montigny wines. He was a bit of a curmudgeon. We had a good relationship with him, but he was sort of one of those tatty aristocrats, and he was always trying to tell us what was right and what was wrong. But it was in the end, it was a very good relationship for us both. And we sold his wines through our early paper copy newsletter for years. And then he died. And we sat there looking at each other thinking like, well, I mean, somebody's going to pick up the domain and it will carry on, but it didn't. And so the Château Cary Potet just sort of went into the dark for probably 10 years. And then Ellie, as in Ellie and Dennis, was in a supermarket in France at one time about 5 years ago. She was walking down the aisle and she saw the Cary Potet label. And so of course she bought a bottle. She's like, what the heck is this? And on the back, it said it was made by the Château de Chamois. So I got in touch with the Château de Chamois, and it turns out that the woman, Veronique Desfontaines, at the Château de Chamois, was the partner of Charles de Bessay. There she is. And when I got in touch with her, she was a bit shocked to say, because I was saying I'm looking for Château Cary Potet, and it doesn't seem to exist anymore. She said, well, it was my partner, and we've kind of taken it on, and it's now made, his vineyards are now made under our name. And I said, would you be willing to sell these wines under the old Château de Cary Potet? And she was so thrilled. It was a really touching moment. So we have been, for the past few years, selling them under the name of Cary Potet, we've sold them for 20 years. But it's only been recently that we've come back to selling them under the new management, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah, so you kind of found them out of nowhere again, just reappeared.
It was just like, it was, the only reason that Ellie found them in the supermarket is because they had a contract with one of the supermarkets for a certain term. And they had to produce these wines a certain number of wines every year under this label. And so we found them because of a contractual agreement with the supermarket. It's really weird.
That's kind of funny. Well, I'm glad you did. I say this about a lot of wines, but I really love the Cary Potet. Again, it's one of those surprised wines that when I tried it, I was like, wow, this, it has a lot of depth and structure and everything. It's just, that regional wine. So good things happen from contracts, I guess.
Yeah, it's a wine that you're always one of your go-to wines, Greg. If we're just talking and we'll open a bottle while we talk, you're always saying, "Oh, we'll open the Cary Potet." And
oh yeah, Absolutely.
Well, both and
Yeah.
both red and white. But this is, I want to make a distinction because for all the Charles de Bessay's wines were very good, and we knew them mostly for the whites, so we're the reds we didn't much pay attention to in his era, but we came back to them now when Veronique de Fontaine's sons, especially Arnaud, has started. He has just such touch with reds, and I don't know whether you can discern this when you taste this wine, but this is very much a, how would I say this? It's sort of like a postmodern Pinot. This is a simple regional Appellation from it's a Bourgogne. The Appellation was Bourgogne, Côte Chalonnaise. But if you taste it, it's made in a style that is really kind of prevalent these days. There's you get the maceration of the full bunch grapes. You also get the maceration of the stems in years where the stems are mature. But what you get here is that instead of trying to keep the wine stable with SO2, with sulfur dioxide, they're leaving at the moment when they bottle it a little bit of CO2 on it, carbon dioxide. So these days you're starting to get these tasting notes that say, oh, this wine has a note of cola, as in cola, Coca-Cola kind of thing. And this one in particular has, because of the black cherry fruit, it has that sort of cherry cola note. And one, I think the cola doesn't come from any particular taste profile. It comes from the fact that they have left just enough CO2 in there so that it's imperceptible, but at the same time it brings it up. You almost feel the spritz of the CO2, yeah. And that's what gives you the sensation of the cola, And it's like you have this black cherry and a little bit of CO2, but it's got the tannin, it's got the structure, and what'll happen then is you put a cork in this bottle, you pull it out now, you can drink it, and it's really, as we're tasting it tonight, it's got that kind of vivacity and the freshness of the fruit and all that kind of stuff. But you leave it a little bit longer, and then that CO2 goes down, and the tannin structure kicks in, and then all of a sudden you've got that black cherry with a lot more depth and I mean, this is sort of masterful postmodern winemaking these kids are doing.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah, and it also.
Oh, go ahead, Stephen.
It also helps protect the wine, which reduces the amount of sulfur in the wine, so it lowers the sulfur content of the wine.
For sure,
because
that's the whole
CO2. That's the reason they're doing it. Yeah.
And it's interesting when I learn about just learning about food and wine and how everything interacts with each other in general. I mean, CO2 just in water has a lot of ways that it changes the flavor of it. So, I mean, putting even just a touch in the wine, you may not be getting that bubbles, but it definitely adds to that flavor, like Dennis was saying with that.
Well, they're not putting it in; they're leaving it in.
Right.
I mean, they're putting it in the bottle while it's still. So in the whole winemaking process, they're not, when you rack off wine and then that sort of stuff, you get rid of all the gas. What they're doing is they're not racking the wine; they're leaving it on there in a sort of a reductive state. So then what happens is when it gets to the bottling stage, they still have residual CO2 in there, which in the old days, your enologist would say, oh, you don't want to do that. But here, what they're doing is that CO2 is replacing the sulfur, the SO2, as Stephen was saying. I mean, this is one of the ways that this younger generation is coming to sort of organic wine production.
So, Stephen, is there a benefit of using SO2 or CO2 over SO2 to help preserve the wine?
Well, anytime you can reduce the sulfur in the wine, that's a good thing.
Okay.
I mean, all our wines are low sulfur because small production, obviously it's like anything, like a small farmer compared to a bigger enterprise production. So the bigger enterprise production, the wines are always gonna have a higher sulfur content within the wines, and people have that does affect people,
Right.
and they do it because they just want to add an extra insurance policy into the wine to help protect it at the bigger volumes. Small bottle Domaine production, by its nature, like everything that's sustainably farmed and handcrafted and lower production, they just have a lighter touch with the wine. So I would say all the wines on the list are low sulfur, but if they can add or leave in some of this CO2 to help protect the wine, then there's less need for protection from other reasons like sulfur.
And so sulfur can be just a little bit more harmful to a person than CO2 is.
Yeah, and people need to remember, like sulfur, we focus on it a lot in wine and stuff like that, but if you compare the amount of sulfur I was reading last week, in something like a dried raisin, it's something like 15 or 20 times the amount that you would get in wine.
Wow.
So, there are food substances that have way higher sulfur content that people, eat away and don't think about it. But they focus on sulfur in wine. But at the same time, saying that there's certain foods with high sulfur, that's not a reason to drink a wine with high sulfur if you don't have to, and you don't have to.
It's these sulfur and sulfites and that sort of thing are natural byproducts of fermentation. So you're going to find them in any kind of food product that goes through a fermentation process. But the point here is that we're dealing with producers who are trying to minimize their sulfur input, and most people these days, even the very best producers, will say that you'll need to add a little bit of sulfur. I mean, those who use no sulfur, that's what we're calling natural wine. It's not even people, even the organic and the biodynamic producers will still use sulfur because it's an organic product. There are people out there who are making wines without any sulfur whatsoever, and that's what we call natural wines. And they can be, I mean, it just takes a really delicate hand to be able to do it. If you want to do fermentation with no sulfur, you're putting yourself out there for it's like our guy Pierre Nagel. I mean, he makes the most amazing Premier Cru and Grand Cru, and in 2018 he spent his entire life working up to this. In 2018, he fermented his entire 2018 crop without any sulfur in the fermentation. That means no sulfur. I mean, that doesn't mean there's still sulfur in the vineyards. I mean, you have to have it someplace. Right. But I mean,
and even the fermentation,
reducing.
The fermentation, when winemaker says no sulfur used in the production of the wine will still contain sulfites, because as you said, Dennis, the actual fermentation itself and all these things does create some sulfur.
Byproduct, yeah, for sure.
There's no such thing as a sulfur-free wine, but
one thing now we're going to the one extreme of things where these winemakers are trying really, really hard not to do that. But I've been receiving guests working in food and wine tourism for 35 years, and people say to me all the time, if I had drunk the same amount of wine that I drank last night with you, and we were talking about and having dinner and afterwards and that kind of stuff, if I'd have done that at home, I would have had the worst headache in the world when I woke up in the morning, and today I don't. Why is that? And this is my sort of cod scientific analysis of it, but I think it has to do with the idea of how much sulfur is in the wine. And I think that these small producers that we're dealing with, one of the reasons that a winemaker would be tempted to put a lot of sulfur into wines is it's not just a stabilizer, it's an antioxidant. So if you want to put your wine in a bottle, and you want to ship it, put it on a ship and send it halfway across the world within the waves and all that kind of stuff, and have it arrive in a stable condition, one way to secure that is, one way to assure that is to put a lot of sulfur in it. If you sell your wines locally, and your clients come to your door and they load it up in the car, you don't have to have that kind of amount of sulfur. And those are the people that we buy wine from. So we go that extra mile, and we deal with a wine shipper who specializes in this sort of small production wines, so that these low sulfur wines are treated very, very delicately as they transit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, it's a tough thing to have, be able to get them over here with being in the good condition. Does after like shipping, does helping letting that wine settle definitely helps with the flavor, right?
Well, always. I mean, even if you just take it to a dinner party, it's going to be different than coming out of, I mean, it's obviously 90 days in a boat is different than putting it in the backseat of your car. But yeah, there's the similar idea.
Right, of everything shaking around.
Yeah. So going back, I think you can safely say if sulfur is a consideration, which it probably should be a discussion point in your wine tasting, Burgundy is a good place to drink, and Elden's a good place to source low production, low sulfur wines. That's a good way to kind of think about that whole side of it. But coming back to this wine, I was talking to the winemaker. The yield on this is kind of Premier Cru level. They're getting about 45 hectoliters per hectare. So I mean, there's a lovely concentration in this wine. It's certainly not on a blind tasting. Again, this on a blind tasting, I think it stands up so well with its concentration level. And they've got 7.5 hectares. The vines, again, generally we've been very lucky with all these tastings. Kind of average age vine of this is about 55, 60. So that kind of perfect age limit.
Like we said before, it's coming out of Côte Chalonnaise. So here is a picture of their vines. And then this is the picture of the Château and their barrel room. So, but here's a map of Côte Chalonnaise. The vines are down here in Montigny, but they are producing their wine closer to Bourgogne area.
Yeah. Age 12 month in oak, and something that me and Dennis has been discussing with me a lot in the last year or so, and came up with Domaine Ponceau. This 6 months in assemblage before they release the wines, Dennis. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I know. You should explain that. Essentially, most winemakers, they pick their grapes, they make the wine, and then they age it over the course of time, and then just before the next harvest, they put it in the bottle. It's a natural rotation. However, there are people who say that if you take the wine when it gets to that point where you would naturally put it in the bottle, and then bring it all together, because it's all in individual barrels, yeah. If you take it at that point and you put it into a big stainless steel tank, not all the all the same wines. If you have a particular Appellation, you put it into a stainless steel tank, and just let it sit in what they call in a mass, en masse, for like 3 months. After that barrel aging, then it gives you a real. It brings it all together. It's what one of the things that when we talk about wine, we talk about tension in a wine. It's like there's you have all of the other elements. You have density and you have the fruit balance and the acidity balance, but you have this sort of tension. It's like the French have a word, they call it nervosity, like it's nervous. It's like and there's something about, especially with young wines, that's a really a charming addition to a wine before you bottle it. So in other words, instead of 12 months aging, they do they'll do 15 to even 18 months aging
Yeah,
in
this
this
is 18.
stainless steel tanks, and then it just gives you an extra element of finesse, an element of
Right. Yeah,
class.
every little touch you do to it can really change the way that it
Just, yeah, it puts some extra life into the wine, and I think that's what it is. That word in English, I suppose, is just life. It just energizes, gives a bit of life into the wine. But you
Yeah,
have to think,
energy is a good word. Tension is, but energy is a good word.
yeah. And but all these steps that the winemaker does is at their cost for our enjoyment. Because obviously, you know, it would be much easier, cheaper for them to bottle, move, you know. But to move to kind of add this extra step into the extra time into the winemaking process causes them a lot of trouble. They only do it for one reason, because they feel the quality of the wine is worth the effort.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
Jean
I mean,
Dobissac, I think a lot of our winemakers are moving to this.
it's very disruptive to the rhythm of their year, but they do it because it makes the wine better.
right.
And that's
Yeah.
what you find with all these small producers. They're unskimping in their quest for perfection.
Right.
Perfection is the word that I use most often when it comes to great winemakers. They're
Yeah,
perfectionists.
they're not in it just to get it out, you know, in and out. They're in it to make you fall in love with it, to make, you know, like it, yeah, like you said, to make it perfect.
And again, it's like you always say, Dennis, it's the respect of the regional classification as much as the Grand Cru and Premier Cru classification.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that's the whole point. It's like they respect the grapes. Coming back to the flavor profile, I think, you know, totally get the dark fruits, cola, caramel. I also get like a kind of peppered, like very finely ground black pepper. And I get a lot of floral notes, like macerated rose. I get more of the macerated rose on the palate, but I do get like some floral. And
It's
anyone
interesting.
else drinking the wine, make sure you leave your comments in the notes. It's
Yeah, and
interesting.
feel free to ask questions and everything in the Q&A section as well.
So totally unfiltered.
This is unfiltered.
Yeah, I was surprised at that too.
Yeah, wow, this is super clean for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but can't you tell? I mean, you remember we were talking about that TR stuff. I mean, when we opened it tonight, Ellie said, "Oh, that's perfectly clear." I said, "No, that's not. That's not perfectly clear. That's not filtered. It's kind of not absolutely clear. It's got just that little shade of sediment in it. It's unfiltered. It's unfiltered."
Yeah, that's interesting. It is like a little bit darker than, like, you know, obviously we don't drink by color, but it's like a little darker than many of the Pinots that you drink. You know, most
Yeah.
of them you through, but this one has like a little. It's very dark,
Yeah.
but lovely color.
Both wines tonight have that kind of very dark note and dark fruit profile and kind of.
Yeah, so like Dennis was mentioning, we talked about the TR Dawn. So this is like a natural wine, and it's unfiltered as well, but it's a little bit more cloudy than Cary Potet. So that's why I was very surprised that it was unfiltered. But the TR Dawn is great as well.
Yeah. So this grape is Pinot Noir. The TR Dawn is Gamay, and so is the next grape that we're going to move on to.
Right.
So not that makes a difference for the filter or unfilter, but it's just interesting to remember.
And you get, like, on the finish, you get a little bit of that vanilla, but it's almost like a bitter vanilla kind of, you know. It's like but it's just slightness from that oak, but it really has everything, you know, that you're looking for in a wine. It has a lot of you know, it kind of tells a story in your mouth, going from the fruits, like a little herbaceous notes, to that, you know, cola, and then to the finish off with a little slight hints of like vanilla beans is probably the better word for it.
But I'm sure you both agree, but this 2018 vintage, which promised so much, is delivering year in, year out. It just keeps, I think it's this 2018 vintage that had everything, kind of had yield and quality.
Yeah.
So we're really reaping the benefits of that vintage, I think, now.
What would you say 18 vintage could age for a while?
Well,
I
that's
think
like
it's
any,
got
it's like
everything.
any vintage. It all depends on the wine that you're talking about. But generally speaking, the acidities that you're finding in the 18s can tend to come more from the tannins, and those tannins will give you structure that for longevity. What happens to the overall texture of the wine after time is another issue. I mean, once that CO2 um, um, goes away, do you have how much of the tartaric acid are you going to have, and all that sort of stuff. I mean, you're looking at wines that are the simpler wines, the regional appellations and that kind of stuff. I mean, they should be being drunk early. In terms of more complex wines, that remains to be seen. 2018 is very heterogeneous, as they say, and it'll all depend on the producer, and it'll all depend on the wine. I mean, we're seeing funny things with climate change. Sometimes the old famous best vineyards are not performing as well as they should, whereas other vineyards from higher up in the hill are doing better. It's
Yeah.
an ongoing discussion.
That's why we're glad to have you on the ground over there. Give us all those insights.
Yeah.
Anything I can do.
Should we move on to the Beaujolais?
True. Yes, we shall.
All right. So, like I said before, this one is Domaine Richard Rottiers, Beaujolais Cru Moulin Avant. And Moulin Avant means windmill of the wind, right?
Or windmill.
Windmill? Okay. I thought it meant windmill of the wind. But so this is Richard and his windmill. So just a fun little picture. And then here's his vineyards and Gamay. Like, I just noticed this today while looking through these pictures, but they definitely train it differently than Pinot Noir. You know, it's kind of like looks a little bit more bushy. Is there a reason for that?
Well, no, every region has several different ways of pruning grapes. This is in this part of the Beaujolais, they prune in what they call a gobelet, like a goblet style. Whereas in Burgundy, we prune in, there are two different types down here. Where they're run on wires, and they're pruned in what they call guillot. But this is traditional Beaujolais pruning.
Okay. Yeah. It's just a little different. Yeah, but so this is the Burgundy right here, and Beaujolais is down at the bottom. So is there a debate on whether people consider Beaujolais part of Burgundy? I mean, I think technically it's part of Burgundy, right?
Of course there is. I mean, one of the French kings said that he was going to ban all production of Gamay because he thought it was horrible. But it's what the difference is Burgundy, it's limestone, and in Beaujolais it's granite. And the limestone loves Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and the granite loves Gamay, and essentially that's what it's all about. Now, that granite in Beaujolais can be as complex as the limestone in Burgundy. So you have in those 10 different Cru de Beaujolais that you were showing on your map there. Pretty much the same sort of complexity that you would find in going up and down the Côte de Beaune and the Côte de Nuit. I mean, the wine that we're looking at right now is in zone number 4. It's up further north. It's in and Stephen will tell you more about the technicalities of it. But that's a very granite soil. But the funny thing is that in the old days, they always talked about Moulin Avant as like, if you had an aged Moulin Avant, the Burgundians would say that they had a hard time distinguishing it from Pinot Noir. And why that is, I don't know, but this is the story that Gamay grown in that sort of zone of that granite around the Moulin Avant and Chenin is apt to aging and gives you wines that will remind you of an old Pinot Noir. So Stephen, tell us more.
Yeah, I think there's even a word for it, which, you know, I confirmed with Dennis. It's Pinot. So when they come across, I don't know, does it just refer to wine from Moulin Avant, or is it a general French term that refers to anything that reminds someone of Pinot Noir? But this Pinot wine, or word in French, I kind of found attractive.
Yeah, they'll say that Moulin Avant Pinot. That's sa Pinot. That means it's boy. That sound. It shows. It expresses itself as a Pinot. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, Moulin Avant, it has a lot of different types of lots of different types of soil, and even some of the cru areas have limestone. But granite is the reason that Gamay grows there, and there's a pink granite in Moulin Avant, and it imparts this minerality and manganese into the wine that they just that makes a distinctive style there. And you know, I think if there's a stepping stone between Burgundy and Beaujolais, which is always good for every wine lover to have a stepping stone wine, I think, you know, because we're always trying to advance our palates, and Moulin Avant is a great place to start because the wines are serious. The classification system down there with the crus is not the same as Burgundy. So, you know, we're always trying just to help people understand, you know, the law and how things are managed in France generally. And we always speak about the different wine regions having different wine laws. For example, we always talk about Bordeaux and Burgundy and the difference between the actual specific land, the vineyard being classified in Burgundy. Well, in Beaujolais, the cru villages, these 10 cru villages, it's the whole area that has the cru appellation. Now, that doesn't mean it will always be this way, and there is discussion, kind of debates ongoing that center a lot around Moulin Avant, whether specific terroir and vineyards down there should be identified as, you know, with specific classification. It's an interesting debate that will happen, that is happening and will happen in the future. But I think we can safely say the cru wines are serious, and serious wine people should consider them. And they've been kind of overshadowed in the last, you know, 20 or 30 years with this movement that was a mistaken movement of just pushing the inferior wines of Beaujolais onto the world at the expense of some of these. But the good thing for us is you get great value in what essentially is kind of premier cru style winemaking for, I mean, the two
let's look at it the other way around. I mean, the problem with Beaujolais is that everybody thinks, when they think Beaujolais, they think Beaujolais Nouveau, and Beaujolais Nouveau is like bubblegum. It's like soda pop. It's like it's like what they're doing is taking the wine that was just produced 3 weeks earlier, forcing it through a fermentation, forcing it through a filtration so that it's clear, and putting it on the market for a media event. I mean, that's not even wine. I mean, if you take Beaujolais for and put that all aside, there's Beaujolais, there's Beaujolais Village, and then there's the cru of Beaujolais. In the same way that we have Bourgogne, Burgundy Village, and Premier Cru in Burgundy. I mean, nobody in Burgundy is going to take a wine, put it into a bottle, and try and sell it for for Halloween, for just for the sake of selling that kind of stuff. I mean, somebody came up with a great marketing idea to push the image of Beaujolais, and they sold a ton of wine, but they were promoting Beaujolais with its most inferior product, whereas what we're presenting here is its superior product. And it just goes to show you that the state of the world is such that after all this Beaujolais Nouveau baloney, that the best wines of Beaujolais Cru, Moulin Avant for one, sells at about the same price as a regional Bourgogne, and that's just shameful. Somebody
Yeah.
somebody did a bad turn to Beaujolais, and we are here to show that there's a Beaujolais renaissance and to bring back the great producers and the great terroir of Beaujolais and put them back in their natural, in their rightful place.
Yeah, I'm excited for it, especially after tasting this wine, because you're right. Like, you normally think of that bubble gum kind of taste to it, but this is so. I mean, it has so much depth to it that you're just not expecting from, because of the marketing and everything of Beaujolais Nouveau. You don't expect that from.
Yeah.
Great.
Dennis is so right, because it was at that moment they had a great marketing idea, but it has done a lot of damage to the region. I was talking about an interview I heard with Thibert Ligier Belair, who the family originally, or still own La Romanée, a family from Louis Saint-Georges, winemaker from Burgundy, also has vines in Moulin Avant, and the family go back, they're, Burgundian history. But he was looking back through one of their price lists from 1911, and the Cru Beaujolais was the same price as the Vin Romanée and the Gevrey Chambertin. So, if you go back then, and then you come to now, that says it all. So right. Burgundy's done a good job of marketing itself, and Beaujolais, there's great value for wine drinkers and wine lovers,
And I'm sure the quality of Domaine Ligier is, for his Beaujolais vines, are just as good as his other, or as they were back in 1911. But
they were, and I've tasted both his and this, and well, both good winemakers, including yeah. There's a lot of good winemakers, and I think we're going to be expanding our Beaujolais range. I think in the next year, we will definitely have some new producers coming on.
And the reason for that is all these great young producers who can't afford to buy land in Burgundy. We know a lot of great young producers who are buying land up in the Haute Côte and plant, in some of the areas where we call the Lesser Appellation in Burgundy. But Beaujolais, they can go down there and they can have essentially a Beaujolais Cru, as opposed to a village in a regional appellation or a village wine, so the young talented producers are flocking to the Beaujolais, and we know dozens and dozens of them, and everybody you talk to knows somebody else. I mean, it's the real deal. Richard Rottiers, I met him. He's from a family in Chablis. And I first tasted his wines at a tasting in Chablis, and I was at his mother's, and he said, well, I've taken off and I've gone down to Beaujolais because that's what I can afford to buy. And he says, I'm in Moulin Avant. It's like, this is amazing stuff. I mean, that's what's happening in the Beaujolais, because they ruined the reputation of it. They're flooding in with talent, and there's a renaissance underway right now, which is at this point really amazing in terms of the interaction among all the young producers. The quality is amazing. The terroir is fantastic, and the prices are crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the price of vineyard down there is 1/10 of a village vineyard.
Oh, I'm talking about the price of a bottle.
Oh, that too.
Yeah, the price for winemakers though to buy the vineyard, so that's why you're talking about 1/10.
And noble vineyards. That's why Thibert Ligier Belair is down there. I mean, he's one of the noble, the nobility of Burgundy. It's like Dominique Lafon going into Macon and that kind of stuff. They can't make more Burgundy land, so they're looking for quality vineyards elsewhere. to produce great wine, and that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Let's crack into the wine.
yeah, so all of Beaujolais has to be Gamay, right? There's no exceptions to that.
No,
Unless it's white.
There's a white.
Yeah, it can be. I think Aligoté, Aligoté is gonna be no more from 2024, but that's just from memory from reading a few months ago. But I think, and there's a tiny amount of Chardonnay. I think 1%.
Okay.
And there is some Pinot grown down there, but
Interesting.
But you know, it is this thought about granite. Pinot grows on granite, and Pinot is very, it can produce a huge yield. So it takes a lot of manual work to reduce. Hey, Agus. It takes a lot of work to reduce the yield of Pinot to be able to create quality wine. It's not easy, First of all, they do a planting density, and then they have to prune, nearly always by hand, like you've seen in that photograph, because of the style. It's difficult to machine, and so aggressively prune to reduce the yield to make sure the quality is there. And so, respect to these winemakers that are making these quality wines and bringing the region up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we were talking about either before the tasting started, but I mean, blinding this, it has a lot of the characteristics of Burgundy, in itself.
Yeah. He does a semi-carbonic maceration or a semi-carbonic fermentation on the grapes.
Which, funnily enough, is happening more and more here in Burgundy, with these guys doing full bunch fermentations and rather than crushing. I mean, it's all part and parcel of the same thing. We're talking about good winemaking practices, not necessarily regional traditions that have to be followed by the letter of the law. I mean, you go to see Pascal Marchand's wines, and the number of full bunch macerations that they do. People aren't macerating wines before fermentation anymore. They're infusing them, and they're letting the fermentations take place inside the berry. So when it explodes, what you get is the fruit rather than the tannins. I mean, this is what's happening now. I mean, it's an entire new generation. We're living through an amazing time for winemaking in Burgundy, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So
with the semi-carbonic, they're allowing a certain percentage of intercellular fermentation, which allows a certain roundness into the wine. But they're not. It's all about balance. They're not going too far in one direction. They're just allowing a little element of these soft fruits, and this interstellar fermentation gets to 2.5 degrees, and then they have to press. So here you there's a natural weight from the top that's naturally crushing the grapes. And Richard Rottiers says about 30% of his grapes are naturally crushed, which releases the juice, which then helps this intercellular fermentation. And after the maceration, and fermentation, there's still sometimes some residual sugar left after pressing, which they'll then do a second fermentation to finish the wine dry. It's very interesting. And the second fermentation is a natural yeast fermentation that he helps develop using the pomace of the grapes, which actually Ellie showed Lily a version of that in Chrome. She was explaining it to me, but it was just a bit too technical. But so it was very, very interesting. I think Ellie has her sourdough starter, which came from.
Ellie has a sourdough starter made from the yeast, the natural yeast of the grape skins. Yeah.
Wow, that's
great. And Richard Rottiers is doing a similar thing to finish his fermentation after the pressing, after the semi-carbonic maceration fermentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a better place to get your yeast besides from the source of where it comes from. That's definitely the way that it's supposed to be fermented and giving you those flavors that from that yeast that's naturally there.
And then very, very little intervention, just racks off once in the spring, aged 50% barrel, but old barrels, 7 to 12 years. And
So it's 50% new oak?
no,
Okay.
no. Old barrels, it's like 7 to 12-year-old. So
And
really
at that
hard,
age,
but giving something.
at that age, they're not giving you any oak exchange. That's those wines. Those are neutral barrels at that point, 7 to 12 years.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. It's like, it's a powerful wine with some, with like finesse, and, you know, it is powerfully elegant. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, the nose
Again,
is
I
so
get like
deep and rich.
wilted
I mean,
rose,
you just have to stand
Morello
back,
cherry.
and it's just like you just stand back, and it's just like in awe of somebody who can take something like that and take, I don't know, just produce a wine like that. They're just amazing, these people.
Yeah. Like on the nose,
Perfectionists.
I kind of get a lot of fruit, a lot of dark fruit. And then there's even like a slight like barbecue-y, like where there's like a sweetness to it, but a spiciness. Like herbaceous and stuff, but it kind of smells like a barbecue sauce to me.
It really follows lovely from the Cary Potet, I think, because there's a lot of similar fruit profile to it. There's just a kind of a slightly brighter note from the Beaujolais, even though they're both deep fruits. I get like more Morello cherry from the Beaujolais, from the Beaujolais cru.
Yeah.
But really, really. I mean, I hope that everyone else is enjoying the wines, or will enjoy them if they're just listening to us without drinking.
Yeah. I mean, this is a great Beaujolais. I mean, I could not tell the difference between. The fact that it's not from Burgundy, or I can tell that it's a Beaujolais if you blinded me on it.
Yeah. But I mean, I think we need to get to the stage where it's like in Burgundy, what we should be looking for, or what they're achieving, is a typicity within their own Moulin. They don't want to become. It's like when Dennis talks about the Cremant Bourgogne. So they don't want to be champagne. Right. They want to be the best version of their terroir, of their wine.
Right.
And so that's the thing. I think if you speak to these guys, even though they like talking about this Pinot, which is interesting for everyone, I think what it does for us as Pinot and Burgundy drinkers, and for hopefully you guys in America, is it helps you get one foot into this region, start understanding it, and all of a sudden a whole new area opens up. And that's exciting. And all it is then is just exploration of that area and producers. And it's like we always say, you follow the producers. And so, you find this wine, then you can also drink the village and move on to other cru villages, other producers, and just, it's just about expanding your palate and your mindset and your knowledge. And then a new area opens up, and it's good fun because they're all connected through the drive for purity and to express the terroir.
Like everyone does have their certain preference, but I love just tasting things in general. And so when you get to have these high quality wines from everywhere in Burgundy, and even going into Beaujolais and stuff like that, it really puts, I don't know, it's just fun to try all these different things and have and kind of see those the difference between everything, I guess, and what makes something taste this way and what makes something taste some other way.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna have to leave you.
Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna jump off. All right, Dennis, Take care. Yeah, we'll probably get together. I hope everyone's going to look forward to their next shipment. We're putting the wines together and putting the emails with the information packs together now, getting ready for them. There's some exciting wines. Greg and me often have the difficult choice or task of tasting them, making sure they're up to scratch, and trying to kind of plan this journey of wine tasting and going through the regions and giving you guys a selection of different producers, different regions, and the reasoning why we do that. And so we've been really lucky. I mean, this kind of Burgundy club has, I think, I was saying recently, it's a hidden secret, but it's becoming a very popular hidden secret.
It sure is, yeah. And it's fun to do it. It's fun to talk to everybody about the reasons why they joined the club and what they're looking for too. So, please give us your feedback on anything that we do so we can get better and kind of tailor it more towards what you're looking for.
Yeah, because for some people, it's they're in the club because they love Burgundy. They love it for years, and they just want us to throw maybe different producers and the reasoning behind at them so that they can enjoy them. Their palates are used to Burgundy. And for other people, it's because maybe they are, coming new to the region, and they just want to have a kind of a comforting hand to kind of introduce them to what they should expect from the wines. And so I think hopefully we're doing a successful job of ticking both them boxes. And please don't be afraid if you think know someone that maybe wants to get into Burgundy or is thinking about it, but maybe a little bit intimidated. Promote the club to them, tell them what you think of it. And
yeah, it's definitely the best way to get somebody to learn more about Burgundy and be interested in the wines that you're drinking and more conversational pieces and stuff like that. So this is my and Steven's email addresses. Follow us on social media and everything. We post videos, Facebook, Twitter. We also have a YouTube channel that we post a lot of videos if you're trying to learn about wine. Again, Steven's email address, my email address. Feel free to reach out to us for anything, any questions about wine, stuff like that. So yeah, thank you for joining us today, and hope you enjoyed the video, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
See you again soon. Take care.
Bye.